got it. So Hunter Biden is selling art to pay for his $15,000 a month rent in Malibu. How can you guarantee that the people buying that art aren't doing so to gain favor with the president?
The job of the Justice Department is to investigate criminal allegations. You have information.
Are you investigating this? I mean, someone who bought Hunter Biden's art ended up with a prestigious appointment to a federal position. Doesn't it look weird that he's become this immediate success in the art world as his dad is president of the United States? Isn't that odd?
I'm not going to comment about any specific...
Not going to comment, not going to investigate. So right. Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped doing that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped?
I'm going to say again that all these matters are within the purview of Mr. Weiss. I have not interfered with them, and I do not... Yeah, but if you were confident
that he had stopped, you could...
And I do not intend to interfere with him.
So it was a lot of Chinese money that was working its way through these shell companies into the accounts of the Biden family. So the China initiative was set up during the Trump administration at the Department of Justice to go after the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And the Biden Justice Department dissolved the China initiative. So I guess I'm wondering, does the department have any documents that would detail the basis for why you got rid of the China initiative that President Trump had set up?
The Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division gave a long speech which explained that. He has testified before Congress several times. We'd be happy to provide you with...
What's the basis? Just tell us all now. Why was the China initiative dissolved?
What the Assistant Attorney General said was that we face attacks from 4 nation states: North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran, and that we need to focus our attention on the broad range of these attacks. Sometimes we don't know.
Wait a second. Are you saying that North Korea has the same malign influence risk to the United States as the Chinese Communist Party? Are you trying to represent there's some parity there? Because here's what it looks like. It looks like the Chinese gave all this money to the Bidens, and then you guys came in and got rid of the China initiative, and it was successful. Like, I saw one rationale that you guys got rid of the China initiative because it was racial profiling. But one of the people you convicted was a guy named Charles Lieber, who was a Harvard professor taking $50,000 a month to do China's bidding and give them whatever research was being done. Are you aware of the millions of dollars that moved through Rob Walker's shell companies from Chinese Communist Party entities into Biden family bank accounts? Are you aware of that?
There were a lot of questions that you just asked. Let me start with the first one about North Korea. North Korea is a dangerous actor, both kinetically and with respect to cyber.
But not on par with China. I'm on the Armed Services Committee.
I'm not in the business right now.
It makes you look unserious to suggest that.
May I answer your question? Or
answer the question about whether or not you know about all the millions of dollars that moved through Rob Walker's.
So you don't want me to answer about North Korea?
I already know the answer, and so does everyone. They're not the same risk as China. So let's get on to serious questions and serious answers. Do you know about the money that moved through Rob Walker's shell companies, yes or no?
As I have said repeatedly, I have left these matters to Mr. Weiss. I've not intruded. I've not interfered. I've not tried to find out what he knows.
It's like you're looking the other way on purpose because everybody knows this stuff's happening. And you know what? People don't pay bribes to not get something in return. Right? The China initiative resulted in the convictions of a Harvard professor, of someone at Monsanto. So we were working against the Chinese. They paid the Bidens. And now you're sitting here telling me that North Korea is the big threat. I got to get to this one thing on January 6th. So did the FBI lose count of the number of paid informants on January 6th?
Let me answer your question about China.
I want you to answer this question. I only get 5 minutes. You've already sort of, I think, screwed the pooch on China. So January 6th, did you lose count of the number of federal assets? Did you lose count and order an audit?
Gentleman's time has expired.
I get an answer to the question of did they lose count?
No, let him answer the question.
The time has expired. The Attorney General can respond.
China is the most aggressive, most dangerous adversary that the United States faces, and we are doing everything within our power to rebut that, to stop that, to prevent their invasions, both kinetic, and through cyberspace. And we will continue to do that.
If someone gave that answer in your courtroom when you were a judge, You would tell them they were being
Mr.
non-responsive,
Chairman,
and you would direct them to answer the question.
Point of order, Your Honor.
Time is,
Badgering the witness.
Point of
Time
order,
has
please.
expired.
I got it. I was
You like
laughing.
Your Honor? You want to stick with that?
Yeah, I was getting
Okay.
laughed at to call me Your Honor.
Point of order either way.
Okay, I understand that too.
All right.
But the gentleman asked his question before his time expired. The Attorney General did not respond to the gentleman's question. I was hoping he would respond to the question about the confidential human sources on January 6th. He didn't respond to that. I'm sure we're going to get an answer to that later.
Of course,
Now-
Mr. Chairman.
now
There were
recognize
8
the
questions
gentleman.
before that he was not given a chance to answer.
Understand,
So
but
the witness might have thought.
But the witness doesn't, Mr. Chairman, point of order. The witness does not control the time.
hang on. Exactly right. Members control the time. If they want to switch their question and focus on one more question that they'd like an answer to, I want to give the witness a chance to respond to that final question that Mr. Gates asked. He didn't respond to it. Someone else is going to ask it, I'm sure. We now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'll just follow up a few of the questions we were asked here. Did Devin Archer not say Joe Biden did nothing wrong?
Be clear, I only know about Mr. Archer from newspaper reports. I want to be clear that I kept my promise to not involve myself in this
Okay,
investigation.
now stated. He said Joe Biden did nothing wrong. Secondly, did you say that President Trump appointed Weiss, who then you appointed?
Yes, President Trump appointed Mr. Weiss as United States Attorney.
So that should take care of that issue. And they say the department's been weaponized. Wasn't there an investigation of Mr. Gates and you didn't prosecute him?
Justice Department does not make comments about its
Well, it
investigation.
shows you we're not weaponized. If we were weaponized, we'd have done it. That was a beautiful exchange there, and it shows we didn't do that. You are the nation's chief law enforcement officer, and I appreciate that. And law enforcement's one of our government's fundamental functions. Crime is growing too much in this country and in my city of Memphis as well. We need law enforcement to be effective, swift, and fair. I'd like to focus my questions on what actually affects the American people. Crime. How do we get smarter law enforcement, requiring smart resource of allocations, not about funding or less funding, but the right funding for the right programs, and see that that happens? Memphis, as hiring has become more difficult, we've lowered our standards to get more officers. That's not the way to do it. The COPS program is helping us review the policy and procedures, and I thank you, the COPS program, for doing that. But what can Department of Justice do to help see that law enforcement is more efficient and more effective?
So the key to this is our partnership, the FBI, DEA, Marshals, ATF's partnership at every local level with local and state law enforcement, in task forces, in discussions to target the most dangerous criminals in those communities, but at the same time to engage the communities to help engender community trust in law enforcement. Everyone who's prosecuted violent crime cases, and that includes me, knows that you need the trust of the community in order to get witnesses. We in the Justice Department are helping our state and local colleagues do just that. The funding you described from the COPS office and in the Office of Justice Programs allows us to give money to state and local police organizations that are having trouble with recruitment and retention and promotion of law officers, and helps them make their departments respectful of constitutional rights, and at the same time effective in the investigation and prosecution of criminal law violations.
Thank you for those activities, those programs through COPS. You've also reinstituted patterns and practices investigations of certain police departments, and Memphis is one of them, and I thank you for doing that. Can you share with us how important those pilot programs are and how they can improve policing?
Yes, Congress has authorized the Justice Department to conduct pattern or practice investigations when they have a reasonable belief in that there has been a pattern of unconstitutional behavior in a police department. We are careful to select those cases where we think there is such a pattern. We make those investigations. We then work with the law enforcement agencies in the cities. Our hope is to come to a consent decree that will lead to a better, more efficient, and more constitutional police department. We have been successful in all of our cases to date in reaching consent agreements.
Thank you, sir. You were part of announced bringing of charges, federal charges against the 5 officers who killed Tyree Nichols in Memphis, and I thank you for that. We need that federal charge, and we need our department looked at. If there's a shutdown of the federal government, how will that affect the Department of Justice and affect policing in local communities?
Well, I haven't done a complete calculation on the effects of a shutdown and the difference between which employees are indispensable under the statute and which ones not. It will certainly disrupt all of our normal programs, including our grant programs to state and local law enforcement, and to our ability to conduct our normal efforts with respect to the entire scope of our activities, including helping state and locals fight violent crime.
Thank you, sir, and Happy New Year, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman, Mr. McClintock from California, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, looking again at the appointment of Jack Smith and David Weiss, this double standard of justice couldn't be more glaring. Jack Smith was deeply involved in the IRS scandal that targeted conservative political groups to harass. His malicious prosecution of former Governor McDonnell was unanimously overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts rebuked Smith directly for attempting to criminalize political activity. You appointed him to prosecute Joe Biden's chief rival for the presidency. And then we have the appointment of David Weiss. Weiss deliberately allowed the statute of limitations to run out on any charges that could have implicated Joe Biden in influence peddling. He originally offered Hunter Biden a sweetheart deal that was ultimately upended by the court, and he's the one you appointed to pursue the charges that could implicate Joe Biden. That leads me to only 2 explanations, either corruption or incompetence. So which is it?
Those are the kind of questions that judges would rule out of order.
I'm sure you would. Which is
Look, I said before, and I will say again, Mr. Weiss was the Republican-appointed United States Attorney appointed by President Trump.
Do you at least see the obvious double standard applied in these 2 appointments?
Mr. Weiss was a Republican appointee. Mr. Smith is not registered to either party. His entire career was as a career prosecutor.
I'm not asking what their party registrations are. I'm asking about their records and how those records would commend them to the appointments that you made. This is a question of judgment, and it's a question of motive. What was motivating you to do this?
Mr. Smith had a nationwide reputation for integrity and for appropriate prosecution. His work can be measured by what he actually has filed. Everyone in the country can see the indictments.
How can you say that after he was so heavily implicated in the IRS scandal or the rebuke that the Supreme Court gave and many other examples? But let me go on. We've had 2 IRS whistleblowers inform Congress of attempts by senior Justice Department officials to obstruct the criminal investigation into millions of dollars of ill-gotten and undeclared income to Hunter Biden. They noted several deviations by department officials from normal process that provided preferential treatment, in this case to Hunter Biden, a direct quote, including allowing the statute of limitations to lapse, requesting IRS and FBI management level investigative communications, prohibiting investigators from referring to the big guy or dad in witness interviews, excluding the investigative team from meetings with defense counsel, and notifying defense counsel of pending search warrants. The U.S. Attorney's Office even tipped off the Bidens of an impending search of a storage unit where their records were being kept. Now, that sounds an awful lot like obstruction of justice to me. Was that coming from you or from somebody else?
I'm sorry, was that coming from you? I don't understand the question.
all of the actions that your employees took to obstruct the investigation of Hunter Biden and the earnings that he made and the taxes he failed to declare, their source, and ultimately who they were paid to?
I'm going to say again, with respect to the Hunter Biden investigation, that it has been and still is in the hands of Mr. Weiss, an appointee of President Trump. I don't know about all of these allegations. Some of them appear to have been from the period when the Attorney General appointed by President Trump was still the Attorney General.
Do these charges trouble you at all?
Mr. Weiss will have an opportunity to explain the decisions.
Well, you're the guy in charge. Does this trouble you?
I have intentionally not involved myself in the facts of the case, not because I'm trying to get out of responsibility, but because I'm trying to pursue my responsibility.
Your FBI director testified before this committee of an uptick in, quote, known or suspected terrorists coming across the southern border. And he told us that the southern border represents a massive security threat. Those were his words, a massive security threat. Do you agree?
I am perfectly happy to align myself with the director of the FBI.
Well, why is it then that we seen your administration rescind the Trump-era orders that had secured that border? I mean, we've seen an exponential increase in suspected terrorists.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness can respond. He chooses.
I mean, this is the answer to this question about immigration law is an extremely long answer. I would defer to the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for the physical security and about first contact at the border.
Well, we've tried to get answers from him, and he doesn't give them to us, so we're hoping you would. I understand, Mr. Attorney General, you've requested a short break, so we'll take a short break and resume in 5 minutes.
Okay.